Thanks for staying with us. Now, adoption is a legal placing of a child permanently with a parent or parents other than the biological parents. In this process, the parental rights of the birth parents are permanently terminated. By adoption, the adoptive parent then assumes full legal responsibility for the child. The child thereafter gains the same legal rights as a child born to the adoptive parents. It's no news now that Nigeria, the baby factories are a booming business, especially here in Nigeria. Now, I used to wonder why, but not anymore. Haven't spoken to a few parents in waiting, especially to adopt a child. Adoption in Nigeria is no joke, as some have waited as long as 6 years and are yet to be handed a child. Now, do you have a story to share? If you have a story about your challenges or what you went through adopting a child, please, and what you think that can be done to ease the process of adopting a child, because as long as these structures or the processes remain stringent or whatever, the illegal sale of children will continuously happen and no one will be able to put them in check. So if you have a story, let us hear what you have to say. Remember, you can join the conversation. Send us an SMS or WhatsApp to 081-803-84663. So I'm going to bring in Taiwo Akinlami like in a minute or two, but I wanted to ask your opinion or what you think, is happening, or do you do anything about adopting a child? Do you know anyone that has tried to adopt a child?
No, I don't personally, but I've heard stories from close quarters. And I think our problem is even much more around the stigma and the warped mentality when it comes to adoption and what we think about those children than the process in itself. Yes, the process is a big issue, but because the people in that sector or in that process also do not understand the value of that process and they also buy into that stigma, that is why a person will be waiting for 6 years because they want to adopt a child. I'm not saying that we do not need due processes. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be background checks. It's very important to have background checks on anyone who is trying to adopt a child. I mean, the life of the child is very important to ensure that there's no form of abuse and all that. But I think we need to begin to have a sector in this economy that is working properly. And if it is the adoption side of this country that is working, they need to bring a level of peace, and then we can now start talking about removing the stigma. I was telling you about a tweet I put out now. I just checked that it was in December last year. So I know one of the reasons people were not very comfortable about that tweet was because I tried to relate it with the relationship between Joseph and Mary, and how Joseph wasn't the biological father of Jesus. But throughout the Bible, there is no point where you would ever hear that Jesus is not the descendant of Abraham, right? It was just accepted, and I'm wondering, and then I was questioning why a lot of Christians are against adoption. They just believe that until they go through the normal the Hebrew woman, then you are not woman enough, you are not mother enough. And I also followed up with another tweet where I said, if you have decided, actually looking at the economy and the world where we are right now, you decided within you that you have the capacity to have 4 children. Now, I'm not saying you must have children. You can decide not to have children. But I'm saying if you have decided that you want to have 4 children, why not just think about having 2 naturally, or in whatever way that ensures your DNA, and adopt 2? Oh, God. You needed to see. People are like, why would I want to adopt when I can have my own children? And that's the point.
Elsie,
why can't you adopt when you have your own children?
If we start that conversation,
I know of a woman who, yes, she's very rich. I wouldn't want to call her name, right? She has her own children, and she went as far as adopting 4 children because she has a lot of money, and she ensured that those children
the same quality of education,
everything.
Now, let me tell you something about stigma. If we start stigma conversation today, we will not finish it.
But you know, the people in the process are held in that stigma.
I understand what you just what you mentioned, but let me hear Jennifer's initial thoughts, and I'll bring in Taiwo Akinlami.
Personally, for me, I think there needs to be a thorough education on adoption. People need to understand the whole adoption process. We need to eliminate that stigma, because I feel like that's what the problem is. Like you said earlier, the guest who was supposed to come on said that he doesn't want his child to know that he or she was adopted. And I get that. I understand where he's coming from. But But that shouldn't be the case. There shouldn't be, a child shouldn't feel a certain type of way just because he or she was adopted. You've been brought into a new family. Someone has chosen, has decided to love you as their own. And I feel like it's something you should be able to tell your child. If you've accepted that this person is your child, and I don't see any reason why you have to lie about it.
Because
it doesn't necessarily.
Absolutely. See, so the thing about stigma, I understand that part where you said the people that are involved in the process, they are also stuck up in that stigma.
Yes.
You know, but you see, for me, when I keep on, just Google and see selling of children, you will see a myriad of stories. You know, is it the one that wants to sell the child for 10,000 naira, or is it the one that? So there's a lot of, there's poverty, there's everything. But you see, if you now, as a legal entity that's supposed to give these people children legally, you are making the process tough. How do you now not expect that these kinds of businesses will continue to thrive? And that's why, even because if we want to dwell on stigma alone, we won't even live here.
But very quickly, before you bring in the guests, you know that those who are patronizing the baby factory, it's not so much of the process not working for them. It's so much of, we want to ensure that my wife,
testimony.
Aside the testimony, they claim that they are pregnant, wear whatever or travel, and then when they come back, they are able to give them a new baby, so that nobody around them will know that they were not able to have children naturally.
Well, that's
I mean, it's a multi-layered conversation. I think this would have been nice for a Tuesday night.
I'm telling you, we're still going to bring it back, definitely. But let me bring in our guest. Taiwo Akinlami is a social development lawyer, the co-founder, Power Parenting Company. Is also Parents' Rights to Social Protection advocate and publisher. Taiwo is arguably Africa's foremost child protection thinker and practitioner. And Taiwo Akinlami is actively actually involved in training parents on the list, parents that are on the list for adoption. So he's a perfect guest to have for this conversation. Thank you so much. He's joined us from the US. Thank you so much for joining us, Taiwo Akinlami.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be with you today. As usual, though I'm mixing pleasure with soberness, because the conversation we're having is a very sober one.
Absolutely.
Where children have become merchandises that have been traded, where the process of getting children adopted has become cumbersome, where there's no system in place to ensure that children have a future and a hope that they deserve, their individuality deserves. So it's a sober evening for me.
Thank you, Taiwo. I mean, you heard the conversation. I mean, why I reached out to you last week when I saw that report of a woman trying to sell a child for like 2 million. She was apprehended. Thank God the police caught her. I mean, this is just one. If you go online to search about baby selling business in Nigeria, it is crazy. And so when we now reached out to people that say, okay, there are children that are all over the places, they've been abandoned and all of that. What is the process of adopting a child in Nigeria? You needed to have heard the story. Interestingly, as I was driving this morning to go for my meetings, just this morning, they were talking about adoption on radio. And a caller called and said that he had been on the waiting list for over a year. And guess what? Was it over a year or 2 years? In that 2 years, there's a particular amount of money you have to be paying to make sure, yes, you have to pay to make sure you are renewing something. Taiwo would expatiate on that more.
Wow.
But the guy was saying that he had spent over 1-point-something million, and at the end of the day, he couldn't have a child. But God now did it for him. His wife eventually considered. So there are people that actually do not have biological children, and they are willing to adopt these children. Why is the process so difficult, Taiwo Akinlami?
Well, I think the adoption process is a reflection of the Nigerian system. The same thing that applies to when you want to travel and you want to take a COVID test. It's the same, a lot of things are manipulated here and there. You now know that some airlines have decided that they're not going to fly Nigerians out of Nigeria because they cannot vouch for the validity of the test that we do carry out. So the same way, when you live in a country that is upside down, I keep asking myself, is this a nation? Is it a country? Nothing works. And so the law is clear as to how adoption is supposed to take place. An adoption order is supposed to be made by the court. But the administrative side of it is handled by the line ministry in different states. The Child Rights Act 2003 makes copious provision for adoption of children, makes provision as to who can adopt under what circumstances people can adopt, and the provisions are very clear and copious. There's no confusion at the level of the law. Now, but before the court makes an order, there are processes that people who want to adopt children must go through. For example, in Lagos State, you go to the Ministry of Youth and Social Development. There's an adoption department. You register to want to adopt a child. Preliminary investigations are carried on. A married couple can choose to adopt. A single person can adopt, but a single person, a man, cannot adopt a girl. A single person, a woman, cannot adopt a boy, particularly older boy. So all of these things are there. So you go through a process of screening for 9 months in Lagos State, for example, and thereafter, there is a letter given to you. With that letter, you go scout for children in orphanages, and when you find one, you come back, then the court is approached, then you have the court makes an order of adoption, because that adoption order has to be specific to a child. You don't make general adoption order until you find a child, and the child is available for adoption. Then you go back to the ministry. I found a child that's available for adoption. Then thereafter, the court makes pronouncement on that child. Now, if you want to adopt a child outside Nigeria, if you live outside Nigeria, you want to adopt a child in Nigeria, you start the process from outside Nigeria. And so after you have done all the processes outside Nigeria, then you get an agency outside Nigeria that is going to liaise between you and the ministry in Nigeria. And in Lagos State, for example, you are going to liaise with the Ministry of Youth and Social Development. So when you do that, the next thing is that you are able to adopt, and it is only when that adoption starts from outside the country that you are able to travel with the child. That is, if you are adopted, that is called international adoption. Now, Nigeria is supposed to be a signatory to something called the Hague Convention on Adoption, but somehow, because of misplacement of priorities, thinking that if we sign up for the Hague Convention on Adoption, we are signing up for trafficking and all of that, trying to run away from one problem and creating another. So international adoption becomes very cumbersome. So but when you talk about local adoption, the law is clear. It is the processes that the people that are supposed to operate the law have put in place that have become cumbersome. So, and that is what we are dealing with. I've worked with the Lagos State government to train people who want to adopt. And when I train them as a way of encouraging them, I get their numbers and I get in touch with them from time to time to ask them how they doing, did you finally get a child and all of that. And so this day I sent out text messages to them, as usual. And one of them responded and said, please don't send me a message anymore. You are mocking me. I said, excuse me, please, how am I mocking you? He said, are you not one of them? You trained us. You said we're going to get a child. The first letter, the duration of the letter that you get is 1 year. The first letter has expired. The second one has expired. I've not still gotten a child. So what are you encouraging me for? So I had to tell her that, no, I'm an independent person training for Lagos State. I'm not the one placing children and all of that. Then I walked into a school in Lekki, and the woman saw me and said, Mr. Akinlami, you are welcome. Do you remember me? I said, madam, I can't remember me. So you are one of the people, I'm one of the people you trained for the Lagos State government on adoption. I said, yes. He said, do you know 3 years down the line, 2 years down the line, I'm yet to get a child? And she told me a particular story that's very pathetic. He said, my husband and I went to this particular orphanage and we found a child. And they told us that the child was not adoptable. And so we left. It was one of our scouting around. You go around every Saturday, going from one orphanage to the other, looking for adoptable child. And she said, they said the child was not adoptable because of the experiences they have had. They suspected a foul play. So they went back to the place, one Saturday after, and the child was gone. And they started raising dust. Where is this child? We were here. It's supposed to be first come, first served. We were here last Saturday. You said this child was not available for adoption. What has changed between then and now? Where is this child? And they made the much noise they could make, but you see, nothing much happened. And she was telling me her frustration that day that she saw me in her school, where I went to speak about how much trouble she has gone through trying to adopt a child.
Taiwo.
And it's rampant. You know, I tried to adopt for my client. We couldn't get a child in Lagos. We went to Osun State. We couldn't get a. We went to Ogun State. We couldn't get a child. We went as far as Ondo State. We couldn't get a child. Then finally we got a child in. Finally we were able to get a child in Osun State, and it's because we have personal relationship with the director of child there, and we're able to explain our plight, what we have gone through to try to get a child, and we were able to get a favorable response. But at that time, my client was already tired. You know, they gave up. They were not even interested anymore.
So, you've given us the steps to adopt internationally and locally, and it sounded pretty straightforward. But coming down to that screening process, which you talked about, is what I wanted to break down, because apparently that is where the problem starts. We want adoption to be easy. And I'm glad that you're saying this, because if you listen to our chat before she brought you in, we're basically talking about the fact that we are the problem. Our stigma, our pride, our corruption, our always wanting to be kings in people's lives. You know, there are too many factors that come into play. But that process, can you break down the process? What is that screening about? What do they want to see? And why is it a problem?
Okay, the stigma is one thing, but I don't think we have gone into stigma here. Stigma is, one, I want to take a decision whether to adopt or not because I don't know what society would think. This person has crossed the hurdle of saying, I want to adopt. The stigma is that I've now adopted the child, whether I want people to know whether it's an adopted child or not, but I need to adopt the child first before I can now begin to deal with whether I want people to know or not. So stigma is a secondary issue here. We are talking about bureaucratic bottlenecks put in place by officials of government in collaboration with people running orphanages. Let me explain to you what has happened.
Okay.
You see, an orphanage is not supposed to be a place where you keep children. It's either you give out the children for fostering, give them for adoption, you give them out for guardianship, you give them out for worship, one thing or the other. Is supposed to be a transit home. There's an international outcry that institutional care of children is not working for children. If children are brought up in a home with love, with little resources, they turn out better than an orphanage that has everything to give to the children in terms of materials, in terms of palatial place where they live. That's what research has found. Today, globally, there's a movement against institutionalization of care in terms of children growing up in orphanages and all of that. But you see, in Nigeria, there are some people who have made running an orphanage a business. It's a business. So because of that business, they are not giving up on this whole idea of institutionalized care. Now, this is the issue. If you have, there are number of children you can have in an orphanage. One, you can have a child who is missing, who is found to be missing. That kind of child may not be given up for adoption immediately because the child is missing. They are still looking for the parents. You can have a child who has lost one parent, and the other parent says he or she cannot cope, brings the child to an orphanage to say, help me look after him or her till I'm able to get myself together and know what I want to do. Now, that kind of child cannot be given out. You can have a child who has been abandoned. You can't trace the parents. That kind of child can be given out. You can have a child who is being ill-treated. Now, I'm telling you to hear about what the law says now. You can have a child who is being treated by a particular parent. They are making life difficult for the child, and the child is being constantly abused, and the parents have shown that they don't have the capacity to take care of this child. That child can be given out for adoption. Now, if you don't give out that child for adoption, you can give out a child for fostering. Fostering is that you don't change the name of the family who is fostering the child. Don't change the name of the child. The child of the name of the child remains the name of the parents, and the child, they just raise the child. Now, there's no reason whether it is a child whom one parent has brought that he or she cannot continue to take care of him or her, whether it's a child who is found to be missing, whether it's a child who is abandoned, whether it's a child who is being treated, there's no reason where orphanages should be housing children, collecting aids, collecting food, collecting indomie, collecting all kinds of things, housing children, when there are people who say they are available to foster, to give guardianship. People are available to adopt. So we keep hoarding children. Another racket that is going on there is that people who are giving out children for adoption, they size people up. They size you up. They look at whether you can handsomely reward them for their labor that they have had on the children. So if you go there, they size you up, they look at you, this one cannot really reward us, they're not going to give you a child.
Wow.
So the problem is that how come orphanages are full of children? Fostering is not taking place. Guardianship is not taking place. People go through the process. People go through the process of their background being checked, of their taxation being checked, of where they are living being checked. Everything has been checked to say they are in a good place to adopt children. The Lagos State government has even given them letter. The Ogun State government has even given them letter. The Osun State government has given them letter to say, take this letter, we have certified you fit to adopt. The challenge, that is where the challenge begins from. There's no challenge at the level of verification of identity, verification of status. There's no problem with that. That happens. There's no problem at the level of training of those who want to adopt. I've done that for the Lagos State government. Train hundreds of people. There's no problem with that. But the problem begins from when you get that letter that qualifies you to say you are looking for a child. That you're supposed to take to an orphanage. You are supposed to take to a rehabilitation home and say, I have a letter from the Lagos State government. I have a letter from the Ogun State government. I have a letter from the Oyo State government. That is for orphanages existing in Oyo State, for the orphanages existing in Lagos State to say, I want to adopt a child. Now, this is where the problem is. The problem is this. The orphanages can do whatever they want to do. But who is regulating the orphanages? It is the ministry that is regulating the orphanages that should ensure that the orphanages do the right thing. You don't just give people letters. What is that? People, after you have trained them, they paid you, you give them letter to go and be looking for children.
And
Why
that letter has to continuously be renewed. You know what, Taiwo Akinlami, we need to take a very short break. I want to hear Jennifer's question. Because that letter, you need to keep renewing that letter. So imagine if you have letters from three different states, you have to be renewing those 3 different states every year. We'll take a break. This is a big business. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Thanks for staying with us. This is a serious matter. Okay, so if you're just tuned in, we're having an amazing chat. It's not so palatable, but it's an amazing chat with Taiwo Akinlami on the challenges of the adoption process in Nigeria. Let us hear what you have to say. Remember, you can join this conversation. Send us an SMS or WhatsApp to 081-803-84663. You're allowed to be anonymous today because it's fine. Everybody don't like to talk about this thing. But Jennifer, let me come to you because you've been holding up for a minute.
Thank you, Taiwo, for all that you've said. Honestly, it is really sad, and I'm very shocked by what I'm hearing today. But my question is this. If I want to adopt a child, what are the key steps or what are the processes that you think I need to go through, or the things that you think I need to do to at least get my leg in the door?
Well, if you want to adopt a child, for example, let me use Lagos State as a case study. You approach the Ministry of Youth and Social Development. They have an adoption department. You show up there, you signify interest, you are, to complete some forms. Then they begin to do the preliminary investigation, ask questions, your taxation issue, where you live, are you able to accommodate a child, what is your level of income and all of that. You begin to go through a level of counseling, communicating in a level of training. Once you do all of that and they found you suitable, they give you a letter to say you are now found fit to go adopt, to go look for a child. Now, when you find a child, you come back, then a court gives an order that you are the adoptive parent of that particular child. The process is simple. The law simplified it. But you see, it is not, in Nigeria, what the law says is one thing, what people do is another thing entirely. The challenge we are dealing with is because we have a law that is supposed to be an instrument of social change. We are yet to adapt ourselves to the letters of this law, to the spirit of the law, to the thinking of the law, because this is the point. Why are there children? This is the fundamental question. Why are there children in orphanages, living there, growing up there, becoming men there, women there? Why? Till tomorrow. Why? Go around Lagos. You see, you are journalists. Go around Lagos, go and look at orphanages. Children are there. Now, if you say the child is not adoptable, is it not fosterable? When globally the thinking is that children should be growing up in families, not in institutions. There is no institution. You have 20 children, 25 children, 10 children, 15 children at a time.
Taiwo Akinlami.
When there are parents, yes.
Sorry to cut you, because okay, so I know of a particular orphanage that you and I know of, and I know that the children there are well taken care of. So what people do is they go there and say, you know what, I want to sponsor this child through school for the next term up until university. I want to be in charge of the school fees. So they get people that come into those orphanages and they donate money. And I have gone to that orphanage and I know that they are well taken care of. So are we not modeling up the good and the bad? Because I know some of these orphanages are using this as a racketeering. They're using it as business, right? But some orphanages are actually doing very well taking care of these children. So should we just say that all of them do not have the right to keep certain numbers of children in their orphanages?
You see, orphanages before were residential. But global thinking now, orphanages are supposed to be transit homes. You see, let me tell you something. I belong to a group where, working with SOS Children's Village International, we are developing the protocol for eliminating alternative care, eliminating institutionalized care, trying to create alternative care. We've had series of meetings, series of deliberations, conversation with government officials, and one of the things that we are doing is to bring viable alternative to say, look, there's guardianship, there's fostering, there's all kinds of things. If people are not aware, there's even an exchange program, which means these children go to live with a family for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. It's an exchange program, and they come back. Are you getting? Because you want them to experience the family. The issue is this: no matter how good your intention is, if your intention does not comply with recent and the present global practices, no matter what you give to those children, the problem is still there. You don't. Orphanages all over the world today, what you call orphanages, are losing the place of being residential. It's called institutionalized care, and plethora of researches have found that that's not how children are supposed to be raised. So now the problem, why this is important in this conversation is that if, for example, in Lagos State, the Ministry of Youth and Social Development is in charge of adoption.
Yes.
The Ministry of Youth and Social Development is in charge of regulating orphanages, rehabilitation homes. Now, is the ministry saying they are not aware of the level of dishonesty going on with so many orphanages? Are they saying they are not aware that adoption, the bureaucratic bottleneck of getting a child, particularly when you go to an orphanage, the question is this: who should be the final arbiter? Am I the one that is supposed to be carrying a letter around? And if I go to a place that say a child is not adoptable, can I see the register of children that are adoptable and the ones that are not adoptable? The circumstances under which they are not adoptable, the circumstances under which they are adoptable. Can I now say, if I cannot adopt, can I foster? Can I remove this child from this place
orphanage
and take the child to a loving home?
Sorry.
Can I do all of that? These are conversations, but as long as there's no regulation, you give somebody a letter, you look another way. Whatever happens to the person in trying to find a child becomes the person's headache. It's sad. Now, someone told me what he went through from Lagos to Enugu, to Ogun State, everywhere, to run these tests, to engage on the adoption process, and you keep seeing children, and you keep telling us that the children are not for adoption. Now, note, when people are not able to get it the right way, the thinking is that I must get it anyway, anyhow. By that, we do not justify anyhow, anyway. The truth is, when people begin to buy children, there may be people who buy children because They want people to think that this is their own biological children. So well, there are people like that. And there are people
Taiwo,
who buy children because they are frustrated in the adoption process. Now, they are not justified. None of them is justified for doing that. But you see, in the society, we have different thresholds. We do not have the same thinking. We do not have the same ability to delay.
Can I come in here, Mr. Taiwo?
And that is why, let me land, please. And that is why it is important for the process to be pure, for the process to be sure, for the process to be followable, for the process to be clear. I know that if I start adoption process in 9 months, on the 9th month, I can take a child home. Absolutely. As long as I'm still interested.
You've said a lot, and like Jennifer said, it's more heartbreaking, and it's even worse than we thought. A lot of people that have not gone through this process will not understand these things until they are hearing it from you. So I still want us to go to the solution, because at the end of the day, we want to be able to prefer solution, and we hope that someone is listening and someone would do something. And it takes me back to the stigma, or should I say cultural bias. And do you think that is one of the reasons the processes are not working, in terms of people in the orphanage having, not just the orphanage, now people in the system themselves not seeing the need for a person to come and adopt a child? Because I've also heard stories of how they are treated in that system. Like a person goes to adopt a child, they've gotten the letter, and you see how the attendants and everybody's looking at them like there is some sort of disease on them. Why are you trying to adopt a child? There's always a perceived bad intention in wanting to adopt a child. So can you say this is because of the cultural bias in us as a people that is hampering that system? And what is the solution? What can be done?
Okay, so for me, I want us to separate these issues.
Okay.
If culture is the problem, it means that I'm not gaining anything from it. I'm just a cultural man or a cultural woman who just believe that I'm defending a culture. A person who is defending a culture may not be gaining anything from it. It's just because the person has a misconceived notion of what these things should be by virtue of cultural background, and the person has concluded that those who want to adopt children are not doing well. They have lost their heart, their head, they have lost their mind. But these same people still give out children for adoption. It's just that the adoption is go to the highest bidder. So the problem is not culture at that level. It's not that the person has problem.
It's racketeering.
I won't give you. I will not give you because you cannot reward me. I will not give you because if I continue to give everybody, my orphanages cannot run. Maybe one of the people you need to bring to your program are people running orphanages.
Well, she's coming in next week.
You need to bring them and let them come and explain why these things are like this. Children are not adoptable. Are they fosterable? Can you give them out for guidance? Can you give them out for an exchange program? Why do you want to keep them in your orphanages? Now, it's different. There are children who are in hospices. Hospices are children that are terminally ill and they are just bidding their time. They need a special level of care, and you may want to keep them in the hospice. But in developed climate, there are even people that now take home children who are in hospices. So I think that's number one thing is important for us to understand. There may be a level of cultural thing there, cultural belief and all of that. But what we are talking about right here is a system that is not working. And the way forward for me is, so at the time, the Lagos State government saw the evil, the decay in the system, and all of that, and put embargo on adoption. As a matter of fact, some people were moved around. There was a reshuffling of the entire ministry, of the entire department that dealt with adoption in Lagos State at that time. I think that was 6 years ago, thereabouts. Because the government heard the cry of the people and decided to do something. But that does not solve the problem. When you suspend adoption and you just suspend it because there's an outcry, what did you begin to do? Now adoption has come back. What are we doing differently? What are the processes we need to put in place? Now, so for me, the way forward, number one, we cannot tell people we must have a record. In the Ministry of Youth and Social Development, that is the statistics of all the children in orphanages in Lagos State, for example, and their status. How many of them are adoptable? How many of them are not adoptable? So the reason why people will not go around is for the purpose of chemistry.
Thank you. I was just going to say, Taiwo, if we have a computer database, the pictures
Yes.
of all the children in the
Yes.
database, so you are supposed
Yes.
to pick from the ministry there. Then when you select
Yes.
maybe 3 children, then you go and do a physical check. Then you pick
Yes.
which one you want, but not that
Yes.
you tell me to start jumping from orphanage to orphanage. That is
Yes.
that is already a big gap.
That
Mr. Taiwo.
that is primitive. So if you want to, so what does it take to have a database of all the children in orphanages in Lagos State, a mega state, a smart state, mega city? What does it take to have that? If there's no corruption, there's no somebody benefiting from it. So have the database. By the time people are coming, we can even stay. For now, we are not taking application because we don't have enough children to go around. But you keep taking application upon application. You don't know how many children that are available for adoption and the ones that are not available. Then you issue them a letter. After 1 year, they come to renew the letter. After another year, they come to renew the letter. They keep renewing the letter. I think what we can do, if we are serious, is to generate a database of children, and all the states in federation should do it. These are the children available in orphanages or in rehabilitation home. These are their status. 100 children are available for adoption. So when you start the process, from the beginning, they can even pair you with a child to say, this is the child you are likely to adopt. The way a woman does a scan when the woman is pregnant and she's already feeling that I see the child that I'm carrying the same way, because that is the experience. So that finally, when it's time to adopt, like we said, I have 3 children. For the purpose of chemistry, I want to go there and check my affinity, the way I feel towards this child and all of that. Until we do that, as simple as it sounds, is rocket science in Nigeria.
Okay, we have some comments. Jennifer, quickly, let's hear yours.
Yeah, before I go to my comment, I just want Ms. Taiwo to answer 2 questions quickly. My first question is there a body in place or an institution that keeps tabs on kids that have already been adopted in the past to find out how they are faring in their new homes and how their families are taking care of them? That's one. Secondly, I would like to know, as let's say I want to adopt a child. You said that there are trainings that are being given to these parents. What do these trainings entail? What are these parents being taught?
That one is a long question. Jennifer, you know what? Read your comment quickly because we have like 4 minutes left. So he would answer everything all at once. Quickly. Jennifer, are you there?
Okay, so yeah, I'm here. Okay, so I have a question. Name withheld. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The process of adopting a child in Nigeria is delayed because of kickbacks or corruption. In UK, it takes 6 to 8 months for the process to get approved after checks have been done. The only fees you pay in UK is a one-off court charge of less than £200. You can only be disqualified to adopt in the UK if you have criminal records, you're too young, too old, or you have a bad health condition. Nigerian adoption laws should be looked into. Adoption process should be done within a year, encouraging couples in need of adoption or couples who want to adopt. The checks can be done in Nigeria within the space of time.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a message here. It says, good evening, Antiowa. The key word from the guest, people are being frustrated in the process of adoption, and that's why some people prefer buying a child. The highest bidder is another key. Thank you for that. Okay,
so Taiwo Akinlami, we have like 1 second. I think he has gone.
1 second. That's always the problem with your program. You don't have enough.
We don't have enough time.
So, but let me say that, so the Ministry of Youth and Social Development in Lagos State oversees, keeps tab on children that have been adopted both within and outside the country to ensure that the children are being treated. Now, the problem again, let me say, for the last time, is not the law. This law, Child Rights Act of Nigeria 2003, and the Child Rights Law of Lagos State 2015 as amended, and the Child Rights Law of different states are clear. The Child Rights Law of Imo State, Enugu State, I worked on a case recently, I think from Imo State. These laws are clear. As a matter of fact, Imo State or Enugu State has moved ahead by saying that you can move from fostering to adoption. You can do fostering first, and if you like the child, and this relationship is able to go on well, then you can proceed to adoption. That is also solving a problem. That's what the law has done. The law is clear, but the law is clear. The people are running, are they clear? people are enforcing it. Are they sure? Are they doing know where they want to go? So the problem is never with the law. Those who draft the law sit down to do the law.
So Taiwo, is it possible, quickly, to answer the person that held his, is it possible to have all this process done within 1 year?
It's 9 months. I mean, it's supposed to be 9 months.
So it's supposed, it's possible.
Your 9 months can be 6 years because they will renew the letter for you every year. Then you now go through all of those. The letter is not just being renewed. You go through all of those tests, processes, medical checkup, all of those things you have done before. Before you collect another letter. It's not that once you just show up, they'll just give you another letter like that.
So you have
because some of the tests you have done have expired.
Taiwo,
so
you know what? We have to leave it here.
Again.
We have to leave it here.
So
we have to bring it back.
You can't just be there until some people become frustrated.
You know what? Thank you so much, Taiwo Akinlami. This conversation will definitely need to continue. All right, so thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Elsie Godwin. Now, before we go, do ensure you follow us on Instagram. It's at PlusTvAfrica. You can interact with us further, drop a comment, and most importantly, follow us now. Follow friends and family. If you missed our quote, here it is again. What makes you a man is not the ability to make a child, it's the courage to raise one. This is from Barack Obama. We'll see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. as we bring another great conversation to your screen. Enjoy.